Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the City Update. I'm your host, Mark Aaron, Multimedia Design Manager for the City of Danville. On this week's episode, we are going to discuss the Coalition for a Safe Danville. This coalition was formed by Danville City Council to combat crime here in our community and also earn public confidence that Danville is a safe place to live, work, and play. Now, the coalition held their kickoff meeting back in January. Over 100 citizens came out to learn a little bit more about the mission of this coalition. That meeting was followed up by a meeting in March where a chair and co-chair were chosen for the coalition. The chair of the Safe Danville Coalition is Reverend Derek Mercer. Our vice chair is Don Novet with the Boys and Girls Club here in the City of Danville. Currently, the coalition has over 130 individual members and over 60 organizations actively involved in the coalition. Now, anyone can become a member of the Safe Danville Coalition. Feel free to call 799-5100. That's the city manager's office. They will provide you with all the information that you need to become an active member, get you on an email alert list, mailing list to let you know when our meetings will take place. Now, at two of the first three coalition meetings, the Danville Police Department was on hand to provide statistics on crime here in our community. Specifically, at the last meeting, which was held at the end of April, we talked about victims of crimes here in our community. On today's show, we're going to dive a little deeper into those numbers and give you an explanation of some of the reasons why violent crime is occurring here in the City of Danville and the way we're trying to tackle that crime. So joining me today is the Chief of the Danville Police Department, Philip Broadfoot. And Chief, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Mark, for having me.
And Chief, as we talk about the violent crime occurring here in the City of Danville, I know you had some great presentations that you gave at two of these coalition meetings. And for our individuals who were unable to attend, I'd like to go over those with you today. But before we get started, I want to talk about the role of the Danville Police Department in this coalition. As Chief of the department, what do you feel is the main role for the police department in this Safe Danville Coalition?
As an equal partner, Mark, we are here to help the citizens of Danville make their community a safer place to live. Right. And I tell you, that can only happen with citizens' help. Right. And I was impressed and encouraged by the number of people, number of organizations that came to that initial meeting and expressed an interest in helping and pulling together to make this work. We can't do it alone.
That's right.
It's an equal partnership.
It just doesn't fall on the shoulders of the police department. I know we've got a lot of departments within the City of Danville, Parks Recreation, our Public Works Department, Housing and Development Division, a lot of departments within the city that are taking a role in this coalition because, as you said, it really doesn't fall all on the shoulders of the Danville Police Department.
No. There are a lot of other things that affect crime. I mean, we're tasked, of course, with dealing directly with crime, but there are a lot of reasons why crime occurs, and I think that's why this coalition has great promise if we can address some of those other issues that affect crime.
I know, and as we had the first two meetings, went real well, as you said, and then we had our third meeting at the end of April, and it really opened up some dialogue between the community and all of these different organizations. And I know it went real well the third meeting as well, opening up that dialogue with citizens to these different departments and organizations and how we can combat crime.
Yes, it's like I said, it's exciting to see the possibilities that we can do with the coalition.
Now, at the kickoff meeting, you did share some statistics on major crimes that occur here in the City of Danville and show some trends over a 10-year period. And I want to talk a little bit about that before we get into the statistics from the most recent meeting. But as you look at those trends, what were some of the things that really shined a positive light on Danville? I guess if you could say positive when we're talking about crime, but as you looked at trends over the past 10 years.
Well, and that's really the only way that you can look at crime. You can't look at a single year or a single month because crime varies. Right. And you have to look at the trends. And over the last 10 years, our crime has trended down in most of the categories that we track. And we track 7 categories of major crimes, and we do that for the state police and the FBI. Okay. That's done nationwide, and those statistics are sent to those two organizations and compiled and by them. But the trend that we have, our only area in which we've gone up has been burglaries. We trended down over the last 10 years and then started back up about 3 years ago.
Okay.
But in just about every other crime except the murder in the last 2 years, we've gone up in them. But every other crime, we've trended down.
And as you gather all of these statistics, we're going to go over a lot of that on today's show as we go through these presentations. How does the department use this information in tackling crime in our community once all of it is gathered and you see these trends?
It's depending on what the statistics show, depends on the resources that we apply to the different areas, whether we need to put more effort in certain areas or certain geographic areas or certain characteristics of or certain kinds of crimes that the characteristics will allow us to apply those resources to.
Right.
For instance, if robberies are trending up, we can do more undercover operations and stakeouts and visible patrols like parking police cars and convenience stores and those kinds of things. Okay. And if burglaries are trending up, there are a few other things that we can do differently. So we use these to decide how we can respond.
Sounds good. Now, as we look at this information from the previous statistics that you gave, just crime in general here in the city of Danville, was there anything that really threw up a red flag to you within the Danville Police Department as you looked at those statistics?
Well, there were, of course, there were some good things.
Right.
Out of the last 10 years, our two worst years have been the year 2000 and the year 2008. And our two best years have been the year 2006 and the year 2009. Okay. But the thing that is most disturbing to me is the increase in our murder rate. For a city of our size, of about 45,000 population, an average rate, and this is all cities in the United States, we should average about 4 murders a year. Okay. And that's an average. Some cities have more, some cities have less, but the average is 4 for a city our size. And during that 10-year period, the last 10 years, we've had 4 murders for 4 of those years, and we've had 5 and 7 and 8. But the last 2 years have been alarming because we've had 10 murders in 2008 and 9 murders in 2009.
And so I guess that question obviously came up during these first 2 coalition meetings we had, individuals wanting answers to why. But so for the 3rd coalition meeting that was held at the Institute, well, this one was actually held at Westmoreland, correct, the middle school.
Yes.
You all compiled a PowerPoint presentation and you looked at the victims of these murders and manslaughters here in the city of Danville. Now, how did you all compile that data that you used for this presentation?
Well, we were very fortunate to have an officer that was on light duty. He had been injured on the job and was going to be out for several months on regular duty. So we assigned him the task of looking at all 23 murders or manslaughters that have occurred in the city of Danville during about a 26-month period. For all of 2008, all of 2009, and the first several months of 2010. Okay. And he looked at all of the information that he could find, contacted family members and of both the victims and the suspects, and we were able to compile for that last coalition meeting the statistics on the victims. We will do the suspects at a later coalition.
That was the next thing I was going to say. We're going to look at the suspects.
Yes.
We haven't established a date and time for that next coalition meeting, but that will be part of that next meeting.
Yes.
All right. Now, what I want to do for our viewers at home now, we're actually going to walk through that PowerPoint presentation that you gave at that coalition meeting as much as we can. I know we've got about 35 slides that you presented actually to the coalition members. But the first one here talks about murders and manslaughters, of course, from that time period, January 1 of 08 to March 2nd of 2010 that you mentioned, that time frame. And you have original figures versus revised figures, and I know there's only one difference there, but can you explain that one revision?
Sure, Mark. In the original figures for 2008, we had 11 deaths that had occurred, and that was revised to 10. And that sounds a little strange. How can you revise a death? But right. What happened was that the preliminary medical examiner's report suggested that it was a murder. A man was assaulted. and was an elderly man that was assaulted, and the medical examiner felt initially that the wounds that he received in the assault were the cause of the death, but further tests then determined that he had died of natural causes. The wounds that he received in the assault were precipitating factors, but not the cause, and so the death certificate had to be revised, so that dropped it from 11 to 10.
Okay. Sounds good. Now, the next slide we have is the day of the week of the incident, and I guess this is kind of no surprise to any of our viewers at home that I would say a majority of these happen on Friday and Saturday.
That's correct. In just about any police department anywhere, you will find Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is fairly static. Your number of calls are fairly even. You start to peak on Friday, you peak on Saturday, you drop off on Sunday, and then you go back to that static plateau on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. This is no different for out of these 23 deaths that we had, the majority were on Friday and Saturday night.
And the next one is time of incident, and I know my mom always used to say nothing good happens after midnight, and I think these statistics show that with 14 of these manslaughter or murders happening between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m.
That's right, and when you really look at it, we had 20 of the 23 that occurred in a 12-hour period of darkness, generally darkness.
And then that's pretty much standard across the country as well, as you're looking at these as well. The next one I do want to touch on, and that is a map of the city, and you've plotted out where these different incidents occurred, and you see majority of those in the center portion of the city. And is that something that you see trend-wise when you look at other crimes that occur in the city?
Yes.
Not only just murders and manslaughters, but crime in general in the city of Danville?
Yes, the core area of the city is where the majority of our crimes occur. And the murder manslaughter is no different. I will say that there's only 22 of the 23 that were plotted on this map. We had some computer glitches and couldn't get the 23rd one plotted.
Okay. Well,
but the majority of them do show up in that central area.
But this is good. I know you utilize mapping quite a bit within the department on all types of crime to help you all see where incidents are occurring. If you see a pattern or a trend in a certain area, you all utilize that on a daily basis, correct?
Yes. Sometimes we can, just common knowledge.
Right.
When a lot of them happen on a certain street, you don't need a map to figure that out.
Right.
But the maps do help when you're trying to look at how to allocate your manpower.
Okay, sounds good. Well, Chief, we're going to have to take a quick break. We're already through the first half of our show this week, but when we come back, we'll continue with this PowerPoint presentation and statistics that you presented to the Safe Danville Coalition at the end of April. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to this week's edition of the City Update. I'm your host, Mark Aaron, Multimedia Design Manager for the City of Danville. My guest this week, the Chief of the Danville Police Department, Philip Broadfoot. We are discussing the Safe Danville Coalition that was formed in early 2010 by Danville City Council to help combat crime here in our community. We're going over a presentation that Chief gave to members of the coalition at the end of April, looking at the victims of violent crimes here in the City of Danville and looking at the demographics. They broke down the numbers in a lot of different areas, and we're diving into that on today's show. And Chief, before we left, we were talking a little bit about crime in certain portions of the city. That was the map that we showed before we left on break, but we're going to move right along into the presentation because I know we've got a lot to cover.